Hi, Uncle John. This is our quick and dirty flight simulator 101 tutorial for just doing a free flight in the TBM 950 like you asked. So go ahead and start a flight simulator. Get to the main menu like you see here. That's where everything always starts. For free flight, you're going to use the world map. Let's go into that. Before we start looking at the map, turn this down a little bit. So before we start looking at the map, first thing you want to do is select your aircraft. Flight Sim will have displayed by default the last aircraft you use, which just so happens to be the TBM 930, but that may not be the case. So let's go into how to select the aircraft and to get the weight and balance set up. So we'll click on whatever aircraft is displayed here, and that will take you to the aircraft selection menu. And then it will display all of the aircraft that it has installed in the game, whether default or add-ons. They'll all be displayed here. So basically, you scroll through the list and you pick what aircraft you want. In this case, we are sticking with the TBM 930, so we will select that. The next part of the menu is the liveries. Basically, if there's different paint options available for the aircraft, they'll be displayed there. You can select them. We'll stick with the default. And weight balance is probably the most important part of the aircraft selection menu. So let's go through this carefully because it's extremely important, as you obviously know. So basically, the weight balance page will be where you control your fuel and your payload. So fuel can be displayed in gallons or in pounds. If you're doing if you're flying airliners and things like that, you're most likely to be doing it in pounds. General aviation, gallons is usually what we do it in. By default, it probably stick it somewhere around 50% fuel. And it will always have weight in for the pilot and co-pilot if it's, aircraft that generally has a pilot and co-pilot. You can change these numbers to whatever you want just by clicking in and typing them. I generally leave whatever weights to give me for the pilot and co-pilot. The important thing is that whatever you put in here for the payload and the fuel affects your center of gravity, obviously. So you have a handy, aircraft image here with your center of gravity marker placed where it currently is based on which fuel and payload you have selected. So if something is out of balance, you'll know right away. For example, we have 50% fuel, but I could take all of the fuel out of the left main fuel tank, and you notice that the CG marker moves over to the right, which is not good. We want to keep it in the middle. So we also track weight. There's a maximum allowable fuel, a maximum payload weight displayed here on the bottom. If you go over that weight limit, these tables will change to red. So say for example, somebody wants to stick 500 pounds of baggage in the rear baggage compartment. That's not too bad. It's moving your CG aft a little bit, but it's probably doable. And let's say we put 800 pounds in the forward baggage compartment, basically a ton of bricks. And that puts you way out of the CG limit. So you get that warning here and way out of the max payload, so you get the warning there. That's kind of how you keep track and make sure you're loading up the aircraft correctly. So for this flight, we'll just do 100 pounds of rear baggage, 100 pounds of forward baggage. That's perfectly reasonable. You want to put in enough fuel to get to where you're going. It's a flight simulator. You don't have to pay for gas, so fill up your tank as far as it'll go. And if for some reason you're trying to get out of a small airport on a hot and high day and you need to lessen your weight as much as you can, I generally fill up the tanks. As long as it's within the CG limits and everything's fine, we're good to go. Um, the next menu is failures. In Flight Sim, you can kind of turn on random system failures. I never use it. You can try it if you want. You know, if you turn something on, something might fail. The instrument might stop working, or you're leaking oil, and you get some warnings, and you have to figure out how to deal with it in flight. I don't bother with it, but you can. Customization is the next important part. So in Flight Simulator, you will interact with air traffic control, and they will use whatever tail number you type in this field right here. Like for example, I'm using November 775 Delta Sierra. If that's, you know, the tail number that you will use and air traffic control will use during the game. There's also a call sign and flight number. That's more for if you're doing an airliner flight. You know, Southwest Flight 77, you'll put Southwest in there and 77 there. Or if it was a British Airways flight, you'll put Speedbird here, 1, so Speedbird 1, something like that. If you find a very large aircraft, you can turn on the pin heavy to car sign on there, and then it will use that and the call out. So this is the general aviation flight. All we need is tail number and we're good. For the flight model, there's wear and tear options. Where that works, if you increase that wear and tear, basically it just put more drag, parasitic drag on the aircraft. It's not something I ever use. Um, Elevated rudder and aileron authority adjustment, generally leave that alone. Only time you mess with that is if you have a yoke or joystick or rudder control that's a little too sensitive, and then you might want to play around with those settings to get things to work correctly. So basically all we need right now is the tail number, which we have in here. So once you have your aircraft selected, the weight balance done, the tail number done in there, you can click close or click back to behind it to get back to the map. So now we have our aircraft selected. Okay. So a quick overview of the world map. As you notice, the entire globe is on here. Flight Simulator fairly accurately simulate the entire planet scenery-wise without installing extra scenery. Um, every white dot that you see on the globe is an airport that you can fly to in Flight Simulator, so it's pretty extensive. And where you want to go, you can probably go in the game. So if you want to scroll around, you basically click the left mouse button and down to drag. That's standard in the game. To zoom in and out, use your scroll wheel on the mouse. Scroll down, scroll up to zoom in, scroll out, zoom out. A couple of other things to note is when you zoomed out and you can see the whole globe, the live weather is accurately displayed on the globe. So it kind of gives you an overview of what the real world weather is like right now. It basically pulls down data from the NOAA database. So that's a nice feature to have. Another thing is the slider down on the lower left. You can drag that to change the time that's based on UTC, and you can see the Terminator and daylight, nighttime change on that as well. So that's one way to kind of explore the globe and see where you might want to fly to. In addition to all of the little white dots that are in the airport, major airports are displayed as those larger dots. So Salt Lake, San Francisco, LAX, Toronto, Pearson, and if you zoom in, you will get what Flight Simulator called points of interest, things that are modeled nicely in the sim that you can look at, like Fort Knox, um, bridges. They've got that Noah's Ark thing in there. So things like that give you interesting looking things to see when you're flying around in the sim. Okay, so that's basically how the globe works. So we're going to do a flight. Let's do a flight, VFR flight from point A to point B. Just for familiarity, very well. I don't know, let's pick a short flight. Something interesting. And again, it could be anywhere in the world. So how about we take off from somewhere in the LA area and fly to Catalina Island. I think that's a kind of a classic flight sim flight. Yeah. Won't be LAX because that's a big airport. So how about we do it from John Wayne or Long Beach? So basically, if you know what airport you want to take off from, you can just select departure. You don't have to look it up on the map. You can type it in and search. So we can do John Wayne Airport, Orange County, and then it'll select it. Right there. By default, the sim will put you on the active runway, which is fine if you select that. When you start the game, the aircraft will be on the runway with takeoff clearance, everything's turned on and ready to go, which is perfectly fine if you want to do a quick flight. But I prefer to start what flight sim is called cold and dark, somewhere on the ramp. So we'll do that. So we'll go over to, if you scroll in, you can actually kind of see the airport layout. So we pick one of these general aviation spots here, select the ramp. Once you've selected a parking spot, click set as departure. A little thing will turn green, and then up here it will tell you where your departure point is. So once you have the departure point set, you want to pick a landing spot. So we're flying to Catalina Island. So again, you can either, if you know where you want to go is on the map, you can certainly scroll to it and click it. Or you can type it in here by clicking select arrival. And then you can either search for the code or type in the name of the airport. So Catalina Airport. And it'll give you everything that has Catalina in it. So if you're not sure which one that is, sometimes it's better to just put in the airport code or select it from the map. In this case, we know where we're going. KAVX, Catalina, we'll click that, and then click set as arrival. And again, by default, it will put you on whatever the active runway is for your departure airport and for your arrival airport. And the active runway is based on weather. It will generally try to put you on the runway that's into the prevailing wind. So we have our basic route. Take off from John Wayne, parking spot 99, land on runway 22 at Catalina Airport. Point A to point B. Since it's the VFR flight, there's no other waypoint put in there by default, but you can add them if you want. For example, if after takeoff, say you wanted to fly over Huntington Beach, So click that, click add, and now you have another waypoint added to here. So we can do that. Again, whatever routes you put in here, since will be loaded into the flight management system for you. You don't have to worry about doing that. You can do it from inside the aircraft if you want, but if you do your flight planning in the world map, it gets put in for you. Okay, so now we have our basic route. Go back over to the left, top left screen here. Basically, you can pick what type of flight you're doing. You've got two options for VFR. One is direct GPS, which is the default and kind of the standard modern aircraft. You can do old school VOR to VOR, or if you want, all the VOR stations are in the game, even though they're being decommissioned in real life. If you want to fly it your way, you can certainly do that. The IFR, you can route low altitude, high altitude airways. I will probably cover IFR flight in a different video. There's a bunch of other things, as you know, that you have to do to set up an IFR flight. For this one, I'm just going to do simple VFR GPS flight, just following our waypoint. So we'll select that. Okay. So if you notice here, this little green aircraft here, Flight Simulator is always, if it can be, live online, so anyone playing the game will show up for you in the game. That's kind of nice. That will constitute air traffic. There's other ways you can do traffic too. I'll get into that later. So we have the route set up, and like I said before, you can set the time here. By default, it'll pick the live local time, but you can change to any time you want. So for this flight, we can do maybe like late afternoon flight. Then over on the right here, flight conditions, you can go here to select your weather. By default, live weather may be selected, which means that you'll be flying in the actual real world weather conditions at the time. For this video, I'll go to preset and do something. Since it's going to be a VFR flight, we'll pick few clouds. Another thing you notice that in the preset, there's a calendar here. You can set any date, time, and year you want, and Flight Sim will accurately model the sky condition at that time, meaning the sun will be where it's supposed to be on that date and at the time you select it. The stars are actual stars that will be in their proper position based on your date as you select it. Some people do celestial navigation in Flight Sim. It's perfectly capable of doing that if you know how to do it. Everything is accurately modeled in the sim. So in this case, we're not going to mess with that. It's today, 4:22 p.m., few cloud, that's good enough for us. Over here, you have the air traffic section that's turned to off. For you, it might be set to AI or live traffic. Live traffic will pull from flight data from like the flight tracking website and stuff like that, and inject that into the game so you can see live airliner flights and things like that. You will not see proper livery for the aircraft. It'll just be generic models. I generally don't use it. If you use AI, it will just kind of randomly put some air traffic in there for you, just using whatever models are built into the sim. Normally I have this off because I just wanted to see other live players flying around, and I use a third-party program to inject live traffic with proper aircraft types and livery displayed. How I do that is a subject for another video, and I have to set that up on your flight sim, but it does make it a lot more immersive. So during our flight, you will probably hear other traffic on the radio, or maybe see some of the other planes. That is not default flight sim, and you will not get that until I've installed the traffic program on your flight simulator. So that's what that is. And then for multiplayer, I usually set to all players. That means anybody that's playing the game right now will show up in the sim. So if you happen to be in the same place they are, you'll see them, they will see you. Um, if you both using aircraft in the game, you will see the proper aircraft. Um, if you're both using the same third-party aircraft, you will see that too. Otherwise, it will substitute it with some generic model of aircraft. So that's what we have setting here. So we can click go back. That'll take us back to the main menu, and we can go back into the world map. If you do that, just kind of make sure everything is set to where you want it. Sometimes it will go back to some default settings. So it looks like we're good. I'm going to take off from the gate. I'll start from the gate. Go to Catalina Island on runway 22. Direct GPS. So let's get started. Click the fly. And then it will load up the flight. It can take a minute to load up, depending on how busy the network is and where you're going. Then it kind of gives you an overview of where you're starting, but you can just go ahead and click ready to fly. As you notice, because we picked the ramp location as our starting point, you start what is called cold and dark. Aircraft is completely off. So again, if you don't remember to look around, basically you want to click and hold the right mouse button, and then you can move the mouse around, and then that will let you look around. You can also use the arrow key to change your position higher and lower, so you get the view that you want. Okay, that was interesting. Collisions are not turned on by default, in case you were wondering, but you can turn those on. So you can use the arrow key to kind of move around. If you want to get back to your default position, you can always hold down the control key and hit the space bar, and that puts you back into your default in the pilot seat looking straight ahead position. It's a quick way to get back to that. So another key that you want to know for flight sim that you will use a lot is the N key, E-N-D, N key. Click that. It switches you from the cockpit view to the external view. Quick as that. Now, to look around in the external view, it's just like looking around in the cockpit view. You hold down that right mouse button, and then you move the mouse around. You can zoom in and out with the scroll wheel on the mouse. Just like you do in the menus. Click the N button. I can use the scroll wheel, kind of zoom in. That gets useful when you're trying to pick out some of those switches that you need to click that can be hard to see depending on how big your monitor is. And again, to go back to your default view, control space bar if you're in the cockpit. If you're outside the cockpit, control space bar will put you behind the aircraft like that. Or you can hit the S key and it will do the same thing. So control space bar or the S key. Alright, so You have two options for starting up the aircraft when you're cold and dark. You can either open up your checklist, and the aircraft will have a checklist associated with it, and then you can basically go through the checklist. Click that, and it will tell you everything you need to do. And just follow along the checklist. It will even tell you where to look. Like, for example, you want to make sure your exterior lights are off. If you don't know where that is in the cockpit, you can click that little eye, and then it will direct your view and highlight, what it is that you're supposed to be looking at for the checklist. That is definitely the realistic and immersive way to do it. And it will have checklists for every stage of flight. Because it's the quick and dirty version, we're not going to do that. We are going to use the quick start option, where Flight Sim will turn most of that stuff on for you. And that is Control E. Hit Control E, and Flight Sim will basically start up all the basic stuff that needs to be started, which is basically instrumentation, and it will start the engine for you, as you can see here. Now, for some simple aircraft, that's all you need. You're ready to go. TBM is a little bit more complex, so to make sure that that is set up correctly, we're going to go through everything you need to do pre-flight beyond the quick start. So this is the stuff that quick start does not handle for you. So if you notice, this screen is not active. And then we have some caution lights that we have to deal with. So the first thing we want to do with the TBM, and I will zoom in. Remember, use the scroll button on the mouse to zoom in. And we want to enable that center display by clicking right where it says here, press right most soft key to continue. We'll do that. That will turn on the primary display. Okay. So that will be your engine instrumentation, your fuel, and cabin pressure, things like that. And also your annunciation panel, so any warnings that need to be dealt with will show up here. And as you notice right off the bat, we already have some. So, just reminding you that the parking brake is on, which is normal. And then you've got these flashing warnings, stall no heat and pilot no heat. So it wants you to turn on the pilot heat and the stall instrumentation. There's the instrument in there that can detect your angle of attack and warn you there's a stall. It can ice over, so you turn on the heat for that. So I'm just going to show you where that is, because I happen to know. And you can move the yoke out of the way with your stick. So right here we have pilot heat. We want to turn that on. And then we want to turn on the stall indicator heater. That will take care of that. So now we have bleed off. That is for the pressurization system. TBM is pressurized aircraft and it's fairly complex. But we can turn it to auto. That's all we need to do to take care of this bleed off. So we zoom in to the pressurization panel. And remember, you can interact with the switches. Just hover over your mouth until it glows blue. That means you can interact with it. And then to move it, you'll left click and then move it to where you need to move it. So we're going to put it to auto and let the aircraft handle it. So all of our initial warnings are gone. And it's pretty happy, but it's reminding us that the parking brake is on, which is fine. For the TBM, there are a couple of other things that you want to set up. One is lights. So if you look up, your interior lights are all off by default. Now, you can turn them on using the switches in the panel. That's one option. Another option, hit the L key, and that will turn on most of the lights that you need, which will basically be, go back to this tunnel view, your navigation lights are on. I say most because some aircraft, TBM is one of them, it does not turn all of them on. For example, our navigation and strobe lights are turned on, but not our taxi or landing lights. So we can turn the taxi light on there. And if you notice, taxi light is now on. And because the TBM has a pulse option, you can see it pulsing, flashing. Then going back to the cockpit, remember N key to get in and out. Use that a lot. Just select the landing light, and then it'll be the landing light on. And then you can turn all that off by hitting the L key. But if you turn it back on, it'll take you to the last state that the aircraft was in. But it will reset the switches, if that makes sense. Okay, so our lights are on. Not accurate, you're not supposed to have the landing light on when you're just sitting on the ramp, but let's not worry about that right now. You can also control your interior lights. This will be more crucial if it was a night flight. We can see everything just fine. It's a daytime flight. But you can turn on cabin lights and change the brightness of the instrumentation. So that's one thing. For the TBM, another thing that you need to set before every flight, extremely important, is that you have to manage, if you look down on the fuel selector, the left or right fuel tank manually if you want. However, the TBM does have an option. If you scroll up to the fuel panel over here, we're going to use the arrow key to kind of slide over and look at it. We have a fuel panel. We can select that to auto, and then it will automatically switch between the left and right fuel tank to keep that balance. So that's important. Either you remember to do it manually or you put it in auto mode. Another thing that you always have to do for the TBM, this is specific to the TBM, is you have to manually turn on the autopilot trim. Otherwise, the autopilot won't work. So, basically, when you start the aircraft, you start from the left, work your way down to the right, exterior light, interior lights. Don't have to worry about power because we did a auto start. Don't have to worry about engine start because we did an auto start. But you do have to select auto for the fuel, and you have to remember to turn on your autopilot trim so that the autopilot can control the aircraft. So let's go back to our default seat. Again, that's control spacebar. Okay, so now we're almost ready to go. You notice we have our route loaded in the flight management system, also loaded on the HSI right here. It's magenta, what you should expect for a GPS route. You can change that here with your active navigation. For example, if I click that, it turns green. That means looking for the localizer. This is something we will use for IFR flight if you're going to set up a ILS landing. We're not going to do that, just so you know. Click that and just take it back to FMS. As long as it's magenta, you know it's following the GPS, and we should be good. We can set up the autopilot. So for the TBM, what we want is navigation mode on. Notice that it's FMS, which means it's going to navigate using the waypoints in the flight management system, which is the GPS waypoint. You want to make sure the flight director is on. Again, the little white line will display if it's on. And the flight director will kind of give you hints here on the display what you need to follow to get on path. You turn vertical navigation on. That will come in handy later to have the autopilot, set your climb and altitude. And you can also use the scroll wheel. There's two ways to do altitude in the TBM. You can set in your vertical speed manually using the scroll wheel, and it will display on here, and the flight director will also move. Or the other option is use flight level control. What that does, if you click that with your VNav on, the aircraft will climb and descend at the best rate to maintain whatever your current airspeed is. So that's generally what I use. That way you don't run the risk of climbing too steep and losing too much airspeed and stalling if we're not paying attention. So we have those kind of set up. That's all we need to worry about for now. I usually turn the yaw damper on as well. And we can set a cruise auto too, so we don't have to worry about that later. If you remember in the world map, I think it's set about 5,000 feet for cruise. So we go ahead and select that. Okay, so autopilot is preset. Scroll back in, notice down here we have lots of other options that we can use to set up that accurately model. And for example, you can pull up your flight plan. This will be more useful when we do an IFR flight. I'm just kind of showing you what some of the things that are available. You have your radios. You can put in frequencies this way if you're a stickler about accuracy, but I'm going to show you a more automatic, easier way to do that. And you can kind of set up speed bugs. You can set minimum, things like that. Again, that's more for IFR flight. We'll cover all that stuff in an IFR flight in another video. But for basic flight, we're pretty much set. Okay. So, if you notice, kind of busy in here. So we have to work our way out of all this traffic. I'll show you how to do that. Alright, so we need permission to take off. So the key that works no matter what you're flying, the keys that I'm giving you are going to work for every aircraft. If you want to pull up the radio, you use the scroll lock key. Scroll lock. And that will pull up your ATC panel. Or you can move the mouse up to the drop down menu and click on the ATC icon. However you want to do it. I use the keys, it's faster. Scroll up. And basically, it will give you menu options based on what it's expecting that you're about to do. So we're just sitting on the ramp. We're going to do a VFR flight. So in real life, the first thing to do would be contact ground. So those are the options that you get. And it will tell you what the frequencies are. And if you want to check the weather, you can click on that, get the Atlas weather. So let's do that.
John Wayne Airport information, Yankee 00000 Zulu. Wind 258 at 4. Visibility, neither. Sky condition, few clouds at 1,700 feet, few clouds at 4,700 feet, ceiling 13,700 feet broken. Temperature, 15. Dew point, 13. Altimeter,
So that's your current weather conditions at John Wayne Airport.
Landing and departing runway 20 left and runway 20 right.
Then it gives you runway information as well.
All aircraft read back hold short instructions. Advise controller on initial contact. You have Yankee.
Okay. You don't have to listen to it, but it's nice. So let's click on ground. See, you can either hit it, click the button in the menu, or hit the number that corresponds with it. So we're going to, let's see, we know we are going to head north because we're going to fly over that beach. So we'll do the park north. Another thing that you can do that's very useful in flight, because sometimes it can be hard to see the map in here. Flight Sim gives you an extra map that you can pull up, and you bring that up by hitting the B key. and it calls it the VFR map. That's useful to have open because you can zoom in and out, and it's just like a moving map display. It's just VFR map. It will show you traffic as well. You can keep your aircraft centered by click GPS tracking, or if you want to kind of move around and see what's ahead, you can just scroll it. Just click the left mouse button and scroll around. Use the scroll wheel to zoom in and out, see your route in there. Then just click GPS tracking to center your aircraft again. Another thing you can do is you can turn on isoline map so that there's like a lot of terrain, kind of give you an idea of where that is so you don't hit anything. This is useful to keep up because it's easier to see than the map down here. It also works in the external view as well. So I use the external view a lot because even though flying in cockpit is more realistic, your field of view is very restricted because you're using a monitor. So it can get disorienting if you have to look around with the mouse while you're trying to fly. So at critical points of flight, I do tend to go to the external view, even though it's more arcade-like. That's just my preference. You can do however you want. Alright, so we have our map pulled up. We're going to the part. Actually, we're going more to the west than the north. So we're going to request the taxi to the part west.
John Wayne Ground, Daher, November 775 Delta Sierra, ready to taxi west, departure with Yankee.
Daher, November 775 Delta Sierra, taxi 2, and hold short of runway 20 right, using taxiway Bravo Golf Bravo Lima Kilo Lima. Contact tower on 128.35 when ready.
Okay, so ground control has given us our plans for taxi and gave us the taxi route. In the game, the taxis are accurately modeled, including all the lights and the signage. So you could follow it that way if you want. Sometimes it can be hard to see. So what the game does also do, it kind of gives you a blue arrow to follow. I generally have that turned on because it's easier to see where you're going with that. Alright, let's acknowledge that taxi plan real quick.
Taxiing hold short runway 20 right, using taxiway Bravo Golf Bravo Lima Kilo
So
Lima.
we see where we want to go with the blue arrow. And with all these planes around, we're going to need to get backed out. So another option that Flight Simulator gives you is ground services. Click that. You can request a pushback, just as if you were an airliner. So let's do that so we can get backed out. So before we move, a couple other things that we'll follow on the checklist will be covered. We just have to remember to do it. At this point, I like to have my trim settings set up. So you do have the trim panel here. You can do it in cockpit if you want. You have to find out where the trim controls are. Sometimes they're on the yoke, sometimes they're on the center panel. It depends on the aircraft. But no matter what aircraft you're following, the keys for the trim setting are the 7 key and the 1 key on your numeric keypad on your keyboard. So make sure your num lock is on, and then you can use 7 to trim down, you can use 1 to trim up. We're taking off, so we want to get that trim somewhere in the green, about 10%. Good. So our trim is set. And then we also have flaps. Again, in cockpit, you could use your flaps lever control if you want. Oftentimes it's easier to use the keyboard. And for the keyboard, it's the same for any aircraft, and the flap keys are F5 through F8. I'll go back to this external view. F5 is flaps fully retracted. F8 is flaps fully extended. You can see it changing the flaps there. And then F6 is to back up incrementally. and F7 is to lower the flap infinitely. But we're taking off, so I'm going to lower the flaps 1 notch, and I have my trim set in the green for takeoff, so we're good. So we're going to request a pushback. And the last thing you have to remember is to turn your parking brake off. Again, you can find out where that is in the cockpit. There will be a switch for it. It's different for every aircraft. Or you can use the keyboard, which is the same no matter what you're flying. And that is control period. Hold down control and hit the period that's in the number keypad. Control period. And then you can see that the parking brake light went off. On, off. Alright, so now we're ready for pushback. So we'll request a pushback. Again, I like to use the external view so I can kind of zoom out and then make sure that I'm going in the direction that I want to go.
John Wayne Brown Daher, November 775 Delta Sierra, requesting pushback.
Daher, November 775 Delta Sierra, pushback request accepted. John Wayne Brown, Southwest 4529er with Yankee.
So you notice we're getting radio traffic from other aircraft. That's because I do have a traffic program running. If you look way back there, you'll notice that we've got aircraft at the gates and everything. So once I get that installed on your flight sim, you're going to love it. It definitely makes things more interesting and more immersive. Another thing you notice that the pushback in this game does not work very well, but eventually it will find it and push you back. You do have to tell it to stop. Not realistic the way it does it because you're doing it through air traffic control instead of talking directly to the rampant. But that's how it works in the game. So you can also tell it to steer to the left or to the right. Well, for now, I'm going to go straight back. And then when you're happy, you can just request pushback stop.
John Wayne Brown Daher, November 775 Delta Sierra, requesting the end of pushback.
Daher, November 775 Delta Sierra, request to end pushback received.
Alright, we'll let him get out of the way. So now we're ready to taxi to the runway threshold by following arrows, basically. Like I said, you can do this in cockpit if you want. You can look around, zoom in or out, get your view set to do that. Or if you're like me, the easiest thing to do is just go to the external view and enjoy the scenery. So let's give it a little bit of throttle. I also like to make sure, it's a good point to make sure all your flight controls actually work. Your rudder, aileron, like that. So make sure there's nothing funny going on with your joystick. Alright, let's give it a bit of throttle. Start taxiing. Go back to clearance on the radio. Ground control may ask you to stop for traffic. If you don't, there's no collision set in flight sim by default. You just kind of like phase right through the aircraft. But if you want to be realistic and it tells you to stop and hold for traffic, you can do that. So my joystick does not have rudder control, so I'm using the keyboard for rudder. So you know that I'm kind of going all over the place. It's annoying. I do need to update my joystick so I can have actual rudder control. Basically, we're just following at taxi speed, the blue line, to our threshold point. Look around, the Learjet taking off there, or landing. There's more traffic up there.
November 137 Juliet Tango, requesting the end of pushback.
Actually a little fast.
Tango request to end pushback received.
The brakes will slow down a bit. Definitely make sure you know which key on your joystick controls the brake. Otherwise, you're going to trouble really quickly. cockpit, you certainly can. It's not that bad. I just prefer external. Half the fun of flight sim is just looking at the scenery, looking at the plane.
John Wayne Ground, Southwest 1142, requesting
It's way too
pushback.
fast. Let's slow down a bit.
Southwest 1142, pushback request accepted. Taxi to and hold short runway 20 right, using taxiway Bravo Golf Bravo Lima Kilo, Lima Bombardier 7 Juliet Tango. John Wayne Ground, Delta 1277, requesting pushback. Delta 1277, pushback request accepted.
Almost at the threshold. So as, you know, proper, come to a stop. A little bit too far, but we're there. Make sure we have to stop at the threshold. And at that point, as you know, I'll be behind the aircraft, come back in. At this point, you will switch over to tower frequency, hit the 1 key, and then request takeoff clearance, which is 3.
John Wayne Tower Daher, November 775 Delta Sierra, ready
You
for
notice
west
we've got some
departure.
traffic
Runway
over there that's
20
also
right.
lined up. And aircraft coming in from landing, so we're going to have to wait for a while.
Hold short runway 20 right.
Like it just told
Traffic
us.
is going on the runway.
Well, this is why I like to have, you know, the live traffic. It's definitely a lot more fun. Let's acknowledge our hold short.
Hold short runway 20 right, Daher 5 Delta Sierra.
So now we're just waiting for takeoff clearance. But while we're doing that, let's just make sure that, you know, we're good to go with the autopilot. Nav mode is on, flight director mode is on, VNav is on, yaw damper is on. So autopilot's ready to use. We're ready. Okay.
Alaska 1202, exit runway when able.
What we're going to do is we're going to take off. Airspeed comes alive. When we get to V1, I'm not sure what it is on this aircraft. Probably somewhere 100, around 110 knots. We'll take off, hit the G key for gear. Or you can use final landing gear, you know, lever here, which is right here. Or hit the keyboard key, because it's the same for every aircraft. No, we got our takeoff clearance, so let's do that.
Cleared for takeoff runway 20 right, Daher 5 Delta Sierra.
Let's get lined up before another aircraft comes.
Going to 120.8 Alaska 1202. John Wayne Tower American 2659er, ready for VFR departure runway 20 right.
Let's get lined up on 2 right. Oh, look at that, that's pretty cool.
Runway 20 right. Traffic is Daher TBM 9 on the runway.
Once we're lined up,
John Wayne Tower
run up the engine with the brake on,
10 miles.
engine power up,
ILS runway 20 flight approach.
release the brakes, and we're off.
1366 heavy.
Yeah, you're going to kind of see me swinging back and forth because I do not have a proper rudder set up. I really need to.
ILS runway 20 flight approach.
Airspeed alive, going down the runway,
Cleared ILS
and the
runway
white's
20
on, so
right.
we're approaching V1.
1366 heavy.
We'll start lifting off on its own, get a little light, so you know we're good. So positive rate, hit the G key, and the gear up,
7 Juliet Tango, ready for IFR departure runway 20
fly
right.
straight out,
Bombardier November 137
get out of
Juliet
traffic,
Tango line up and wait.
switch back to the cockpit here.
Daher 5 Delta Sierra, continue for west departure. FedEx 1366 heavy wind 258 at 4. Clear to land runway 20 right.
So we're going to acknowledge that, we're
John
going
Wayne
to
Tower
continue
Daher,
west.
November 775 Delta Sierra, continue for west departure.
Now we're actually going to start turning
John Wayne Tower Delta 1277
towards
at runway 20 right.
our
ready for
GPS
departure
route,
IFR.
because for the TBM, you need to be heading towards the magenta line in order for the autopilot to pick it up correctly. If that makes sense. You can't just switch on the autopilot anywhere and expect it to pick it up. So if you notice on the VFR map, I'll zoom into it in a minute here. Reduce the throttle a bit. I'm heading towards it. So let's get back to level flight. Reduce our throttle a bit. And now we can hit autopilot and it should pick up. And then we're going to hit flight level change. And then it will climb at whatever the appropriate climb rate is, given the speed that we're at. Let's give it a bit more speed. And as you notice, it's picking up the autopilot. If it's doing it correctly, we should start turning to the left. Got our frequency change.
John Wayne Tower, Daher, November 775 Delta Sierra, frequency change.
And managing the radio, remember, for the most part, you're just doing what it tells you in the menu. So we're in Class CSB, so we'll request that.
775 Delta Sierra is type Daher TBM.
Get our flaps up.
West of John Wayne, 3,000 feet. Request
Have
clearance
a
to
look
transition
around.
Charlie
It's
airspace.
LA, so of course it's smoggy. We're now climbing towards 5,000 feet. Using the autopilot. So basically we're just managing the radio at this point.
Delta Sierra.
Using the menu.
Daher 5 Delta Sierra radar contact 5 miles west of John Wayne, 3,800 feet. Clear through the Charlie
Kind of
airspace.
look around.
Maintain on navigation.
Look around in the cockpit if you want. Well, I like using autopilot because it gives you a chance to look around.
Clear through the Charlie
do have to keep up with
airspace.
the radio.
Daher 5 Delta Sierra.
So that's the beach that we're heading toward based on our first waypoint. So we'll fly over that beach and then we will head to Catalina Island. So let's take our altitude down to 3,000 feet, so it's a little more interesting. So with the autopilot, we use the altitude selection knob and drag that down to 3,000 feet. And then we will click flight level change. And then give it a second. And see if it descends on its own. It may not, based on the flight management settings. So if flight level change doesn't do it, you can always click vertical speed mode and then set your descent rate, and it will do it that way. You kind of have to play around with it a little bit to see which mode it wants to use. But if you use the vertical speed, you do have to manage the throttle. Make sure you don't descend too fast. So about 1,000 feet per minute is reasonable. Now we're heading over Pacific Ocean. We just passed the beach. Our landing lights are still on. Turn them off if you want. I'm going to leave them on. Not important for this video. There's some traffic up there. So if you notice, TBM does have traffic alert, and that airplane that we just saw will show up on the TCAS right there. If it does get too close, you will get warnings, and you may also get a traffic alert call from air traffic control too. So that's pretty realistic. We're going to go down to 3,000 feet and head towards Catalina Island. We look on instrument display. It's going to take about 5.5 minutes to get there at our current speed, which is okay. Take a look around, inside the cockpit, outside the cockpit. Take are about 18.5 miles from the airport. Once you get into like 10 miles or so, I could be completely wrong. You're the pilot, not me. But I tend to pick up the tower when I'm about 10 miles out. You can do it whatever you feel is appropriate. It's a VFR flight.
Daughter Flight Delta Sierra, you're leaving my airspace radar service terminated. Clock 1200.
Alright, let's do
Frequency
that.
change approved.
Basically, we acknowledge it.
Squawk 1200. Frequency change approved. Docker 5 Delta Sierra.
And click on the pro. We can request flight following.
SoCal approach Docker, November 775 Delta Sierra, is type
Okay.
Docker TBM 91, 4 miles southwest of Los Alamitos, 3,000 feet. Request flight following.
Daughter November 775 Delta Sierra SoCal approach. Squawk 1647.
And we acknowledge it.
Squawk 1647 Docker 5 Delta Sierra.
Daughter Flight Delta Sierra radar contact 15 miles northeast of Kilo Alpha Victor X-ray 3,000 feet.
So notice here that it gives you an altimeter setting. So you can change the barometric pressure using the knob to do that.
Roger Docker 5
Or
Delta Sierra.
easiest way to do it is just hit the B key for barometer. Hit the B key and it will make sure that your barometric pressure matches what they give you. That way your pressure altitude is correct. Sometimes I just hit it randomly just to make sure that, my altimeter is not drifting. So you can set it manually or just hit the B key. And when you're talking A2C, anytime they give you a different altimeter setting, hit the B key and you're good to go. Alright, zooming in, we're about 11 miles, so I'm going to use the nearest airport list to pull up that airport. So it'll give you a list of the closest airports to you. And then we're going to Catalina, so we'll select that one. And in our case, it's not a towered airport, so we just have traffic. So we'll have to do our own pattern, which is fine. I'm going to zoom in on the map, VFR map here, getting the scroll wheel to zoom in. You kind of get an idea of what you're looking at by zooming in here. Let's see what runways we're using. We can click on it and we get the altitude. So 1573 feet is the airport altitude. So we want to come to about 2,500 feet.
SoCal
Right
approach
altitude.
Skywest 3350 is at 9,000
Let's
feet, descending 8
take our altitude down, 2,500.
Skywest 3350
Vertical
SoCal
speed.
altimeter 29.9, 2 radar contact. Continue to DY in the
950 per
zone.
minute.
Skywest 3350 contact Los Angeles Center on 132.85. Good day.
Click on GPS tracking, get a center, kind of zoom out.
Northeast. Descend and maintain 4,000 feet.
Take in the scenery some more.
Right approach via Sager transition. Clear to Sager.
And then we're going to have to plan our landing since we're not going to get instructions since it's a non-tower airport.
132.85 Skywest 3350.
We're going to land pretty much straight in. We don't even have to enter a pattern in this case. We'll just do a straight in landing. But we can see what options we have by clicking on the traffic menu, so let's do that. Select the runway for landing. Hit B. We're going to do runway 22. So if we look at our compass, when we hit the B key to turn that on and off, that's pretty much a straight in. So we pick runway 22. And then we are now full stop landing. And then we can announce our position. You don't have to do this. It's just immersion and realism.
3 miles northeast, 2,500 feet, inbound to land runway 22.
And let's slow down a bit. then we'll announce on final,
Kilo
which is
Alpha
coming
Victor
up.
X-ray traffic, Docker November 775 Delta
Way
Sierra
down.
is
Let's
on
get our
final
gear
runway
down.
22 to
One
land.
out the flap. G for gear. F7 for flaps. Let's turn off the autopilot. Put on full flaps. And basically just take it in. In this case, we are going to enter a pattern because we started that way too late. But what we'll do is we'll just circle. And then we'll come back around and then land it back on runway 21. So let's call this downwind leg.
Kilo Alpha Victor X-ray traffic Docker November 775 Delta Sierra is on downwind runway 22.
Then crosswind.
Kilo Alpha Victor X-ray traffic Docker November 775 Delta Sierra is on crosswind runway 22.
And now you can see why I use the internal view because it's a lot easier than trying to use the mouse and look at the view on the inside. I'll speed up a little bit. I think I was on the upwind, now I'm on the downwind. So I had that wrong. Again, I'm not a pirate.
Kilo Alpha Victor X-ray traffic Docker November 775 Delta Sierra is on downwind runway 22.
Go out a little bit and then keep them out, see where we are. A little bit more throttle. Teardrop approach. And now
Kilo Alpha Victor
crosswind.
X-ray traffic Docker November 775 Delta Sierra is on crosswind runway 22.
ST to get back behind the airplane. Get us back on final. Here we go. Still a little close, but we can make it work. And then we'll announce on final.
Kilo Alpha Victor X-ray traffic Docker
Hit the
November
wrong one.
775 Delta Sierra is on upwind runway 22. Kilo Alpha Victor X-ray traffic
Oh, let's
Docker
take it
November
down.
775 Delta Sierra is on final
High
runway
and
22
fast.
to land.
We'll get in there. Way too fast. Oh, that's too bad. So we'll go around. Try it again. Get the gear up. Get our flaps up. That was embarrassing. Let's try that again. I'm gonna announce to go around.
Kilo Alpha Victor X-ray traffic Docker November 775 Delta Sierra going around.
It's time to open up our pattern a bit. Alright. I think it's upwind. Downwind.
Kilo Alpha Victor X-ray traffic Docker November 775 Delta Sierra is on downwind runway 22.
This time we'll go out a bit more, give ourselves way more time to get lined up properly on the runway. Yeah, I'm not used to flying the TBM, so I'm way off on my aircraft performance. How much room we need and things like that. Go back to the tunnel view. Make sure we're lined up. At the cockpit view, follow the map that way. Slow it down. TBM is a fast aircraft. So gear flaps back down. Very down. Pretty far away now, so let's do our crosswind leg.
Kilo Alpha Victor X-ray X-ray traffic Docker November 775 Delta Sierra is on crosswind runway 22.
Is that the base? That's actually the base.
Kilo Alpha Victor X-ray traffic Docker
Probably
November
laughing by now
775
when I'm
Delta
way off
Sierra
on
is
this
on
one.
base runway 22.
Alright, now we're on final.
Kilo Alpha Victor X-ray traffic Docker November 775 Delta Sierra is on final runway 22 to land.
That's a lot better. Back to the tunnel view so I can see what I'm doing better. Let's take that one down. Yeah, this part is where you probably do a lot better than me since you're a licensed pilot and I'm not. Just give you an idea of, how you go through the menus in the game and things like that. Down the idle, still a bit high. Really high.
Sync rate.
You got a bit of terrain there.
Sync rate.
The game does have PAPI and battery lights, appropriate for the airport. TBM does have thrust reversers. Basically use the reversers, pull the throttle all the way back, hold it back, and then go into reverser mode. I don't know if that works on your throttle. You have to try it and see. But I managed to get it down. And then let's get off the runway, put the flaps up. Not my best landing, but I don't normally fly this aircraft. I'm not used to it. And now clear runway.
Kilo Alpha Victor X-ray traffic Docker November 775 Delta Sierra is clear of the runway.
And then that's pretty much it. There was a towered airport. You would contact ground control and then they would tell you where to go to park. Park an assignment. Like that. It's small non-towered airport, so we just use our external view and kind of see where we are. Usually, you notice there is a ramper somewhere expecting you to come up to them. It may not always be in the best spot. Usually for the larger airports, it's accurate. For the smaller airports like this, it's not. Absolutely not necessary to follow them. You can park wherever you want. So, I'm going to pull up here. Put my parking brake back on, control period. And we have arrived. In the flight, you can just end it, or you can shut off the engine. So you can take the fuel selector, turn it to off. That's one way to do it. Hit L to turn off your lights. You can also turn the fuel pump off that way. And if you notice, engine's off. Find the master battery switch. Not sure where that is on this aircraft. Probably somewhere up here. And you can turn those off if you want. You don't have to. You can just end the flight by hitting the escape key as well. But for realism, if you want to go back to the Golden Dart for the TBM, kind of find out where those are. The generator, let's go turn it off right there. So everything's turned off. And then hit escape. That's the end of the flight, and hit end. Take you back to the main menu. show you a couple other things. And if you go into the profile here, click on your logbook, and then it will log the flight for you. So you can kind of remember what you did. So that's it. That is a basic VFR flight. Hopefully that helps you. You try to do a free flight yourself, get things set up, get the TPM up and running, get the autopilot set, take off, cruise, use the autopilot, look around, arrive at the airport, land, and shut it down. I'll do another one for IFR flight for you. It's a little bit more involved. Most of the same, but there's additional stuff to set up for IFR flight and then doing ILS landing and things like that. So hopefully this video helped you out. Let me know if it's something I didn't cover that you can't figure out, and then I can do another video for you if watching the video helps you more than going through the flight training tutorial. So just let me know how it worked out for you. That's it. See you later.